No matter how much a wrestler prepares for a matchup, sometimes things can go wrong and they're forced to improvise. Whether this be due to a serious injury or an urgent audible change from management delivered to the wrestlers from the referee, the talent of the match must know how to react to unplanned situations and deliver, well, a satisfying conclusion to a matchup. Most of the time, wrestlers can change the match on a fly without a hiccup, which highlights their utter professionalism and their ability to perform when under immense pressure. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 wrestling matches that were changed instantly as they wrestled. Number 10, Edge vs Randy Orton Over the Limit 2010. One of the top matches on the 2010 Over the Limit pay-per-view was between Randy Orton and Edge. Going into the match, fans expected the match to steal the show, but unfortunately the match was cut short due to a serious injury. When Orton began to pound his fists into the mat, he somehow dislocated his shoulder. Looking back, it's apparent that something went wrong and Orton noticeably takes a few seconds to think of how to handle the difficult situation. Due to Orton's injury, Orton and Edge had to change the match on the fly, as it would have been virtually impossible for Orton to continue wrestling. The new Improvise finish saw both men get counted out, and this was the best scenario for WWE at the time, as he needed to get Orton out of the match as soon as humanly possible. Number 9, Rey Fenix vs Jon Moxley, AEW Dynamite 2023. AEW is rather premature as a wrestling company, so when things go wrong and matches are forced to be changed with immediate effect, not everything always runs smoothly. In September of 2023 on AEW Grand Slam Dynamite, Jon Moxley was defending his international title against Rey Fenix, and Moxley suffered a serious concussion in the match. Moxley was scheduled to win the matchup, yet due to his concussion, the finish was changed immediately and Fenix captured the title. The way AEW handled the situation received widespread criticism. A specific criticism was directed to the referee, Rick Knox, who didn't exactly handle the injury in the best manner. Concussions are no laughing matter and they must be taken very seriously. When it was apparent that Moxley was heavily concussed and basically out of it, the match should have been called off there and then. Ultimately, the introduction of a new finish which saw Moxley take several more moves was completely reckless. During the match finish, Fenix executed a fireman's carry piledriver onto Moxley and Moxley failed to kick out. Instead of calling for the bell at this exact moment, Knox made the ridiculous decision to continue the match. Fenix then hit the piledriver once more and Moxley failed to kick out again. Thankfully this time, Knox declared Fenix as the winner. Number 8, the New Age Outlaws vs the Radicals, SmackDown 2000. The February 3rd, 2000 edition of SmackDown was notable as it featured the in-ring debut of one of the most iconic wrestlers of all time. Eddie Guerrero would make his debut in a tag match as he teamed with Perry Saturn to take on the New Age Outlaws, and things unfortunately went horribly wrong. When Guerrero executed his frog splash, he dislocated his shoulder upon landing on the mat. An audible was then called which saw Road Dogg immediately cover Guerrero to pick up the win. Even though Guerrero and Saturn were booked to win the match, this was the safest outcome and WWE and the wrestlers involved handled the situation incredibly well. Number 7, Chris Jericho vs Neville, Raw 2016. Chris Jericho has a reputation for being a ring general, and in 2016 he showed the entire world why he's truly one of the best in-ring talents to ever lace up a pair of boots. During a match on Raw with Neville, Neville fractured his ankle in a freak accident. It was obvious that he was unable to continue and Jericho decided to change the match on the fly. He would begin to push the referee Charles Robinson, which led to a DQ. Jericho was supposed to win the match, but Y2J could care less about the victory. He just wanted to end the match as soon as possible so Neville could get backstage and the help that he needed. On his Talk is Jericho podcast, the wrestling legend discussed the incident during an interview with Charles Robinson, and this is what he had to say.
So I get up and I'm like, this is really going south.
Right.
Because now people are going to start sniffing that something's wrong. So I'm like, I push you. But I'm thinking, if I push you, you'll DQ me. Because I'm like, okay, at least we got a DQ. Because all I'm thinking is we got to get the spotlight off of Neville.
Right.
Because I don't want this to be a really awkward moment where there's a guy down in the ring and then the thing just kind of ends. I think if I push Charles and he DQs me, then I can still keep this rolling.
Number 6, Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch vs the Kabuki Warriors, TLC 2019. It's no secret that TLC matches are amongst the most dangerous matches a wrestler can compete in, and wrestlers have to be extremely careful when participating in them. At TLC in 2009, the show was main evented by Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair taking on Asuka and Kairi Sane in a TLC match. At some point during the match, Sane suffered a serious concussion, and it goes without saying that keeping a concussed wrestler in a TLC match is a big no-no. Lynch decided to step up and take control of the situation, and she proceeded to directly communicate with Sane about her injury. Lynch would smartly roll Sane under the ring, completely out of harm's way. The match was then drastically changed, with several spots being reworked with Sane's involvement. Number 5. Chris Jericho vs Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, WWE Live Event 2009. Following a widely successful in-ring return at WrestleMania 25 and Backlash in 2009, the legendary Ricky Steamboat decided to wrestle on a number of live events for WWE. On one particular live event, Steamboat was wrestling Chris Jericho, and the planned finish was to see Jericho win, but Jericho decided to call an audible and allowed Steamboat to pick up the victory. This is one of the rare times in which a wrestler has called an audible for something outside of an injury, and only a top talent such as Jericho would have avoided punishment for going off script. Jericho went into detail on the audible call in a chapter of his autobiography, The Best in the World, and what I have no idea. This is what he had to say. I was scheduled to win, but South Carolina was one of Ricky's old NWA stomping crowds, and the crowd was going bonkers when he came to the ring. Eventually, Ricky hit me with a high crossbody, and the fans were certain he was going to beat me, but just like that at Mania, I kicked out of the nick of time and hit him with the codebreaker for the planned finish. But as I covered him, I told him, "Kick out, you got it? No matter what, kick out." Then I whispered sternly to referee Charles Robinson, "Ricky's gonna kick out, do not count to 3. I wanted to pick Steamboat up for a body slam and have him roll me up for the pin, the exact finish of his famous WrestleMania 3 match versus Randy Savage, which is one of my all-time favorites. But my mind had gone completely blank and I couldn't remember the term roll-up. I was flipping through my mental moves Rolodex, but the harder I thought, the less I remembered. The crowd was exactly where I wanted them, and I didn't have much time to waste. So I grabbed Steamboat by the hair and said under my breath, "WrestleMania 3 finish." Of course, the Dragon knew exactly what I meant and rolled me up tightly. Charles counted to 3, and the crowd erupted. Number 4. The Miz vs Shane McMahon, WrestleMania 39. A major surprise of WrestleMania 39 saw the return of Shane McMahon. McMahon resurfaced during night 2 of the show and challenged The Miz. Whilst this was supposed to be a fun showcase and a return to pop the crowd, it ended terribly as McMahon legitimately tore his quadriceps seconds into the match. In an ingenious act of improvisation, Snoop Dogg would come into the ring to challenge The Miz, and this was done whilst McMahon exited the ring so he could receive medical assistance. Snoop Dogg would punch The Miz twice before performing a People's Elbow Drop to win the impromptu match. Number 3. Trish Stratus vs Lita, New Year's Revolution 2005. The New Year's Revolution pay-per-view in 2005 is considered a curse by fans. The pay-per-view featured several significant injuries, and the injury that Lita suffered during a women's title match against Trish didn't just impact the match, it impacted the direction of the entire women's division. During the match, reigning women's champion Lita suffered a torn left ACL after executing a Thesz press off the apron. An audible was called and Stratus executed the chick kick to win the women's title. Stratus' winning goal was never planned for the pay-per-view event, and it's believed that Lita was supposed to walk into WrestleMania 21 a few months later as women's champion. Number 2. The Usos vs Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs, WrestleMania 38. WrestleMania 38 didn't get off to the best of starts as Rick Boogs suffered a torn quad during the opening matchup. Boogs would team up with Shinsuke Nakamura to take on the Usos, and during the match, he attempted to lift both members of the Usos onto his shoulders. This spot didn't go to plan, and this was the exact moment in which Boogs suffered his quad tear. It made for uncomfortable viewing as Boogs was clearly in total agony, and the WWE officials needed to get him out of the match with as much care as possible. A change was then called, and due to the Usos being booked to win the match, they proceeded to rush straight into the match finish sequence. And number 1, The Miz vs Bronson Reed vs Ivar vs Ricochet, Raw 2023. A WWE booked The Miz, Bronson Reed, Ivar and Ricochet in a fatal 4-way match on November 6, 2023 edition of Raw, and the winner would go on to challenge Gunther at Survivor Series in Chicago. The match was well received as the 4 stars worked well together, but when the finish came, everything seemed to go wrong. The finish of the match saw a double pin attempt with The Miz pinning Reed whilst Ivar was pinning Ricochet. Miz secured the 3 count on Reed, but Ricochet kicked out at the last moment during Ivar's pin attempt. It was reported that this was never supposed to happen, and Ricochet was supposed to stay down for the 3 count, virtually giving fans 2 winners. Unfortunately, Ricochet suffered a concussion, so the mistake wasn't his fault, and in a rare occurrence, WWE called an audible for after the match and changed what was supposed to go down. Due to the double pin, Raw General Manager Adam Pearce was going to state that The Miz will take on Ivar the following week on Raw, and the winner of that match would then meet Gunther at Survivor Series. However, due to Ricochet kicking out, they improvised an angle which saw Ivar lay out Miz following the match, no doubt so Ivar's credibility and legitimacy was kept intact. But there you have it folks, 10 wrestling matches that were changed instantly as they wrestled. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.